exciting. And I think I'm a Black woman. I identify as a Black woman. I think people think, well, oh, maybe it's just like, we got to make sure the Black people are right, or maybe the Latinx. I'm like, no, 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 no. It is all of these groups who need a strategic plan to make sure they're included in the workforce. And that takes intentionality.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley in partnership with Leumi Tech and sponsored by Hippo Insurance, Turing, Upwest Labs, and Hillel at Stanford. Welcome to another episode of 20-Minute Leaders. I'm honored to have with me Kimberly B Cummings, founder of Manifest Yourself. Kimberly B Cummings is a career and leadership expert whose mission is to help women and people of color navigate the workplace, make more money, and become industry leaders. Her personal and professional development company, Manifest Yourself LLC, provides organizations with tailor-made solutions to hire, develop, engage, and retain women and people of color. Her work has been featured on Forbes, Money Magazine, TeenVogue, Glassdoor, CNBC, Fox 5, and more. Kimberly is a graduate of Long Island University and received a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration and Master of Science in Counseling. Her highly anticipated book, Next Move, Best Move, Transitioning into a Career You Love, will be released in spring of 2021. Kimberly B Cummings, thank you for joining me on 20-Minute Leaders. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
I love having you here. Thank you for joining me. Where in the world are you calling from right now?
I am from Newark, New Jersey. So literally I can see Manhattan from my window, just a step away.
I love
What
that.
about
Well,
you?
that is where I land whenever I come to visit my brother in New York. So has a special place in my heart. Kimberly, what I'd love to talk to you most of all is your journey and talk about your passions, the different things you've experienced, and really your passion for diversity, inclusion, employer outreach, talent acquisition, everything that falls under this realm. Obviously, this is insanely relevant forever, but especially in this past year when we've seen what's been happening and the understanding of the gap that still exists. And so what I would love to do is I would love to educate myself and learn as much as I can from your experiences, and let's just get started. Tell me a little bit about yourself and where you grew up and how you got so passionate about this topic.
Oh gosh. So when I was born, like we're not going to start back that far, but I was born and raised in a small town in Connecticut. And I was one of a few minorities in the entire town. Um, Almost, except for one grade where a student came in from another town, I was the one and only person who identified as being Black. So I've always been in an area that did not necessarily have what I like to call like visible diversity. Of course, there were diversity in like socioeconomic status and other things, but visible like race and ethnicity was not something that I grew up having a lot of outside of my family. So now I really see how that's impacted my life. But during that time, it's like I just wanted to be around people who look like me. And how that transferred now is that I've literally devoted my career for 10 years now, all into career and leadership development. Like many folks in the early stages of your career, you kind of like stumble, like you try this, it didn't work. You try this, it didn't work. But in my first job as a career development counselor, I still remember the moment where I saw someone get a job as a direct result of working with me. It was actually an internship and they ended up getting a full-time offer and they stayed. And I was hooked because when you can impact someone's career, like we spend 40, I'd spend sometimes 60, sometimes more hours a week working. If your work and your job sucks, like what do you think the rest of your life is going to be like? There's no way to almost make up for that significant amount of time that you spend at work. So what I quickly realized working in career services is that women and underrepresented minorities, so Black and Latinx communities, sometimes were a little bit nervous about coming to the Office of Career Services. I was known as that person who's going to give it to you straight. I'm always a straight shooter. I used to joke and say like, hey, like, don't get me fired, but this is really what the issue is. And we need to fix this. Let's just go with me. Go with me. We're going to make it work. And I noticed it was working. And a lot of students used to refer their friends and their friends of friends. And I was able to work on some really great projects. I presented at quite a few conferences on my work. And slowly but surely, the brand I created matched with some like me playing around on the internet, really turned into a company. So in 2013, I founded Manifest Yourself, which is all about career and leadership development for women and people of color, essentially taking all of the resources that I've learned and put together and studied and coached thousands of clients now on, into a company where I proactively serve those communities, which I feel are sometimes underserved. I used to say many times that we focus so much on inclusion in the workplace. Sometimes we forget about what diversity means and how that may not have prepared someone to be included just yet. So what I mean by that is that sometimes women and people of color may need preparation prior to the inclusion. And I feel like that's where my company really comes in handy. Like if you get a professional, maybe who is a first gen student now in the workforce, and you throw them into a corporate Fortune 100 company, they may not have anyone in their family who knows what that environment is like. They may not have any friends who have done that. They need preparation on literally how to navigate the world of work so that they can maximize that opportunity. And that's what I really pride myself in. My little stick is that I help women and people of color navigate the world of work, make more money, and position themselves as leaders. So that's like the moderate, short, and skinny, kind of long version of what I do.
I love that. I have to go back to something that you said that struck a chord. You mentioned that in the origins of this. You started out by you were in these organizations and you would find the person. You say, you know what, don't get me fired, but there's something that we need to fix here. Why does that sentence need to be first? So because I feel that that's a part of an issue, right?
Mhm. I think sometimes I've worked in quite a few Ivy League institutions. So there's like a little joke about how like you don't know whose daddy donated the building that you're sitting in. So sometimes you want to be very candid, but you're a little nervous sometimes because you don't know who you're talking to, or who their roommate is or whatever else. But sometimes a lot of these institutions may have a methodology about how they work with folks. Any organization that you generally have career leadership development coaching, um, the governing body may have a way that they speak to students or their clients, like non-students, alumni, whoever it is, of how they like for you to pursue sessions. And there's always a little bit of nervousness about creating and providing that feedback. So, for instance, I had a client who I was working with, and for lack of a better way of saying it, like her dress, her personal appearance was the issue. She presented as so much older, and it made people not listen to her. So she's out in the workplace, applying to jobs, doing the best she can, has the experience, but she was prematurely gray. So she had about an inch and a half of gray roots showing. Her the blazers she used to wear were that like super florally, like I was joking to like grandma's couchy type of look. And I told her, I'm like, I really hope you don't take offense to this, but I need you to brush it up. Like you can literally go to CVS and get a $5 thing just to like touch up the roots where your part is. I need you to go to Walmart or Target, and I don't care what the blazer is, but I want you to be a blank slate. Just get something plain black. I don't even care if the blacks match. Um, and when she looked at herself, A, it worked on her confidence because confidence is the big part about being in the workforce. And B, it allowed people to not to look past all of the things. We could, of course, say that you shouldn't be looking at those anyways. It is about the resume. It is about all these things. But we all know that we judge a book by its cover. So how can you present something that is a little bit more like the organization that you're in, or
Right.
transferable skills? How can you speak about your past experiences as it aligns to the organization? And appearance is a big piece of that. Someone would have told me, don't you dare tell that woman to go dye her roots. But you best believe homegirl got a job. That next interview, she got the job.
There you go. Exactly. So Kimberly, tell me tangibly, practically, how do you go about helping these women? Because what you're mentioning here, first of all, obviously it's things that a lot of people would be scared to even say on a podcast, right? I mean, these are very, very direct things that, a lot of biases that we just have as human beings. There's no way around it. We have these biases. And by being able to confront them and to understand, yes, this is how society operates sometimes. And even if it might seem superficial, well, that's the game that some of us, have to play at least a little bit to even get that opportunity. So how do you actually grow this at scale and work with women all over the place to help build both that confidence, but also build that leadership skill as they navigate through the workforce?
So I think with any business, one of the things I've worked on is having a like, core methodology of how I work with folks. So oddly enough, in June, I have my own book coming out where I kind of walk through this process that I do with my clients. And a lot of it starts with like understanding who you are. Once you understand who you are, what your unique value proposition is, similar to how like, entrepreneurs, we have a service, a product or service. We know the transformation that it provides, why you need it, what your problem is, and we kind of sell to you to make sure people understand. But in the workplace, we stop thinking about ourselves as brand. We stop thinking about the experience. So once you get clear on your experience, understanding your core values, understanding your strengths and growth opportunities, putting a plan together, a career strategy to make sure you're attacking those gaps, and then working on how you position yourself through your relationships, how you're speaking about yourself, and kind of leveraging your own authority in the workplace. That's how you really start to combat that. So the methodology that I have, I use in all, whether you're one-on-one with me, whether you're in group programs, whether I'm at a speaking engagement, I'm generally teaching one of those core pieces. And once professionals have that, it ultimately impacts their confidence. Because the confidence many times is what prevents you from rising to those leadership positions because you're not clear on who you are, your skills, why you're there, all of that. So it's this circle that you kind of have to fix these core pieces of. And that's how I kind of leave my framework with my clients.
So what it sounds to me is that you're saying in the end, one of the core just examples is, confidence, but you're not saying, okay, I'm going to teach you how to be more confident. I'm going to help you, I'm going to help you navigate through the different skills or the different things that you need to work on. That as a byproduct, you're going to be gaining that confidence that's going to exude, and from there, it's just a butterfly effect, right? It's like a snowball going. But you have to first fix a foundation or to work on a foundation to be able to get to that top of the pyramid.
Exactly. I think that in the workplace, I strongly believe that your confidence and your ability to advocate for yourself should come from the skills and the experience you provide. Anyone could walk in and be like, yeah, I could do that job. It is not a problem. Like, and then they could be crying at their desk because they can't figure out how to do what it is. The confidence, like when people talk about your personal brand or selling yourself or self promotion, I'm like, that's not like, we're not just promoting something that's bad. We're promoting you based upon the facts, your results, your receipts of what you've accomplished. And if you've not accomplished things that you're proud of yet, well, how can we build a plan so you can do those things so that you can rise to the level in your career that you'd like to be a part of?
That makes a lot of sense. And how do you then do this at scale? So I understand the notion that, if you sit one-on-one with somebody and you work with them and you talk through them and you talk through examples and you follow them as a mentor throughout a long time, that works. How do you actually see, because we're talking about a wider issue, right? A wider gap that you're looking to fix. And obviously writing a book is a part of it. What strategies do we need to employ, perhaps even as a society, to make this happen at scale, particularly for, given a specific demographic?
Perfect. So I would say on a micro level, of course, there's folks like me, right? I wrote a book which is at scale. You'll be able to go to the bookstore and pick that up as of June. I can do one-on-one. I also have group programs that people can go through. And I'm not the only career and leadership development coach out there. There's plenty of us who are trying to do this good work, right?
Right.
But I think on a macro level, I think when we're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, whatever combination of words you'd like to use, I think it's bringing someone into that role and giving them the resources to truly do those things at scale. Because when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's not just diversifying your workforce, it's diversifying the workforce, but not just race and ethnicity. There's also gender, there's socioeconomic status, there's background, disabilities, veterans, LGBTQIA community. There's so many different ways to look at diversity. So understanding what does your organization look like right now and what is the ideal future state that you'd like it to look like, diversifying coming in, then it's how do you retain those folks that you come in, that you bring in? And retaining them is really inclusion. So how do you make them feel included and in a safe environment at the workplace? But then if you're included, it's all great to be included. But if you're not getting promoted, then that's a whole nother issue. So it's also the promotion piece. How do you get the talent, keep the talent, promote the talent? And that's really through training and development programs, mentoring, and all of this honestly takes some money. But if you're going to hire a CDO and say, hey, like, I'm so excited to have you here. You're going to sit on the board. You're going to do these press and media things. But if you don't arm them with a budget and team, this work won't be able to get done. And I look at that as the macro, because if we're looking at the workforce, every company is going to have someone who needs to have someone there who's thinking about this top of mind. Maybe like in an entrepreneur, smaller scale company, they're not quite there yet, but when we're talking about these Fortune 100, 500, 1000, they really need to be armed with the budget to allow their chief diversity officer, or if it's their people officer or HR person, to build a team that can really focus on this versus having people who are diversity excited in the business, like do these side projects, because that's not enough anymore. We need a concerted effort.
I think one of the amazing things that I've been observing over this past year, at least, is this intentionality and this really, company-wide understandings or industry-wide understanding that it's not enough to just, say those words and say, yes, we're into this, or yes, we promote this, but it's actually having figures within the organization that are champions of this, that have the budget, that have the resources, and a company-wide intentional activity to go and promote this. It's not enough to have one person say, okay, you're responsible for this, let us know when you're done, right? That's not how it works. So I think what you're saying, it makes perfect sense.
Of course. And I think that's why people have kind of talked about performative allyship lately, right? Everyone can do the big splashy thing. You can put a black square on your Instagram. You can have your CEO write this letter that sounds so amazing. But what are you actually doing? And that's where the intentionality comes in. People are tired. Yeah, people are tired of no action. And I'm excited to see over the next few years, I think, with the Black Lives Matter movement, with the LGBTQIA community, with transgender rights, with the stop is what are they saying? Stop Asian hate. Like there's so many different campaigns for all different populations. So when you have a team that is able to focus on this and make sure that each community truly feels included, and you actually put actions behind these things, it's exciting. And I think I'm a Black woman. I identify as a Black woman. I think people think, well, oh, maybe it's just like, we got to make sure the Black people are right, or maybe the Latinx. I'm like, no. It is all of these groups who need a strategic plan to make sure they're included in the workforce. And that takes intentionality.
What is perhaps one or two things that I, as a young entrepreneur, and my friends who are young entrepreneurs, as we build our businesses and as we scale, because at the end, when you talk about culture, one of the main themes of this show is culture and building a company and scaling a company. And one of the things that I've learned is that, to build good culture, you have to do it from the beginning, from the roots. You can't come in after you have 1,000 people and say, okay, everybody, we're shifting directions. This is our new culture, right? That doesn't work. So what do I need to do, or what do I need to be mindful of to be successful in this domain from the get-go?
Oh, such a powerful question. And I think diversity is important from the start. It is very easy when you're building something from the ground up to stay aligned to folks who already understand, are invested in the idea. And I think it's important to diversify the thought from the beginning. There are so many studies that show diversity, not only, of course, it's good because, quote unquote, it's hot now, but it actually makes companies better, more productive, generate more revenue. And it's thinking about that. I think it's very easy to say, hey, like me and my friends, like we're all at Stanford, we're all in these classes, we all get it, we're going to launch this. But how do you pull in other groups to challenge your way of thinking, to challenge how you do things? And while maybe it's two people building this startup, but what does your board look like? Are you able to diversify your board, pull someone from a different industry, a different socioeconomic background, different users? Because even when we talk about coding, like there are so many things on the back end of coding that don't even align to different groups that will be using the products. Like there's so many studies, like a lot of people were blowing up in the news for what their code looked like behind the scenes. So I think it's being intentional about finding folks who are different from you to help improve your product or service. I think that's the simplest way to do it. I'm not looking for a 3-person startup to have one of those people a chief diversity officer, but if it's 3 men, why not get a woman there? Why not if it's 3 white men, why not get a Latinx or black person there? Like there's so many different ways to diversify from the beginning. I think it's just looking around you and just opening your eyes to what is around me. Like I'm a Black woman. It's easy to say I have a whole bunch of Black friends. But like when I'm working on different things, I'm like, how would a white male feel about this? When I do my presentations in corporate America, I could be presenting to 1,500, 2,000 people. And I guarantee not all those people identify as Black, Latinx, or a woman. So, how is a male going to interpret this? How is, if I break down the different races that are going to be on the call, how are they going to interpret and intake this information? I think it's just being fully aware of everyone who could be using your product or service.
Kimberly, this was insightful. Thank you for spending your time with me. I know how busy you are, and I can't wait to read the book. And thank you for everything. Thank you for the great work that you're doing. And my favorite question that I have to ask always is 3 words you would use to describe yourself, or what are 3 words that any of the women you've worked with would use to describe Kimberly B Cummings?
Gosh, I'm like, and you told me you were going to ask this, and now I feel like I have to still think. I think that I'm resilient.
Yeah.
I'm someone who's always prepared to bounce back and pivot. I like to see myself as credible in the career and leadership development space. I didn't just build a career based upon um, my own career in a defined industry. I've always been working across industries the entire time. My master's is in counseling. So I've learned career development theory. That's why I do what I do. And I think that I'm ambitious. Well, I know that I'm ambitious. I'm always excited to see what is the next level to challenge myself to create more impact.
Kimberly, thank you very, very much. Continue doing good for the world, and I look forward to keeping in touch and seeking for your advice over and over again. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. We'll talk soon, Michael.
Yeah.